Thank you, Mr. Van Bos. First of all, let me thank everyone for staying for this presentation. Contrary to what you have heard most of the last conference, first of all, we are not a public organization. We are private. We are SME. You have heard a lot of things about looking into the future, what we can do in the future. Here, I try to describe something that happened in the past and try to learn from what happened in the past. And hopefully, it can give you also an idea of an alternative approach. So, I'm sorry, I probably have not configured this presentation appropriately for this setup, but I'm going to cover the background of what I'm going to talk about, which is the development of our company from a very small SME to today still a small SME, but on a global market. It's based on some research I did in the past and a presentation I did in the Academy of International Business. And hopefully it will give you ideas as to what some of the remarks and comments that you have heard in the last couple of days in how it can be approached. Well, first of all, in Hong Kong's electronic industry started very small in the 60s with about mainly contract manufacturers. By 1979, when China opened its doors to foreign investment, most of us enter China and benefit from the low cost and really grew very rapidly. So in the early 80s, the Pearl River Delta was one of the very important regions for consumer electronic production. In the 90s, the traditional competitors, as well as fast, good local competition, also get established. So the situation was reversed. Suddenly, competition became very keen. Overcapacity, overinvestment may give us a very bad time. In the meantime, even though we have a period of first mover advantage, most manufacturers remained in the contract manufacturing business with low margin, low value added. But today, with China's high cost of living, labor standards, and appreciating renminbi, most Hong Kong electronic manufacturers are having a very difficult time if they stayed as a contract manufacturer because of the much higher cost. However, a few Hong Kong companies decided to transform themselves and change their business model. My company, GP Electronics, was one of those who changed. In 1992, we acquired two UK premium loudspeaker companies. Selection was acquired from its owners because the owners want to divest from that business, and KEF was acquired from its liquidators. KEF was a premium loudspeaker company that was very well known at that time. Our strategy was to try to integrate the business, making use of the technology and the brand distribution that these companies have and integrate with our manufacturing in China. Today, we manage these companies. Their business is among the leaders in the respective business segments that they are in. And we develop also into a significant manufacturer, one of the leading manufacturers in the professional audio segment. So I like to look at that. I was very much part of that development, and I like to look at what happened to first make sure that we understand what went right, what went wrong, and try to pass on this experience so that even when some of us retire or do other things, the experience will not be gone. And then we also want to identify the key success factors so that it can stimulate our new generation of management to think of newer and better ideas. And then what is also very important is for us to understand whether we're just lucky, plain lucky. So we try to compare how we develop against prevailing business theories to look at whether that is really right or wrong. So there are many benefits that I can see probably for other management from other companies who are looking at development under pressure. They were looking for what they could do in globalization. That's probably something, a worthwhile reference. And then academically, there's probably some benefits like looking at today's theory, whether they are still good for companies in our situation or companies in the lesser developed part of the world. And in view of time, I won't go through the details. Term globalization is the process really, term I adopt to is the process where the first man climbed down from the trees and gradually developed to cover all key land mass. And global companies are companies who have value-added activities in different countries. And those are well established, accepted in the academic circle, especially among business and economics circles. Many theories, I won't bore you with them. So I look at all the possibilities of describing how the globalization process is often done. And then I decided to pick on two. The first one, the upseller internationalization model, is a theory developed out of the Nordics in studying Scandinavian industries from Scandinavian countries, how they expand their business to the rest of Europe. And the eclectic paradigm is a very well-known economic theory describing how and why companies globalize. They are very popular theories. Professor Dunning actually presented his first idea in the Nobel Conference in 1977, and is subsequently being considered one of the most accepted economic theories in globalization. And they talk about, the paradigm talk about competitive advantages in three areas: ownership advantage, technology, internalization advantage, doing things internally and be efficient, and then location advantage, like ownership of mines and special skills in a certain territory and so on. The upseller internationalization theory is from the Nordics, and it's about how companies, especially from smaller countries, gradually conduct business first through trading, and then when the trade expand, they gradually invest into the market, learn from their business experience, and then grow further and invest further. I think these two theories, while they come from different backgrounds, but they are not contradicting theories. In fact, they describe different aspects of companies' development. So with that, I developed a model that integrates the two concepts with the competitiveness of companies on the green block and the gradual development and learning process on the orange block on your right. The research methodology is probably very technical, and all I can say is we use standard and widely subscribed research methodology in business. So if we look back at the strategy of why we acquire the companies, it's really to control a brand and control a global distribution. From the perspective of a manufacturer, we're always complaining about how little margin we get versus the retail value, and therefore we would very much like to also expand our value added into the market side. So for our company in the 70s, to be able to manage brands and market globally is a dream. So this is the most important background of why we do this. This is probably too small, but I understand you can download the presentation, so you have time to, if you're interested, and you need bedside reading, this is probably better than normal sleeping pill. It covers 20 years, basically. The management strategy that we took, rightly or wrongly, we thought that we could put the two companies together, use the same management, and therefore we gain some advantage in efficiency. And because of our own small organization, we were unable to put a lot of management into the acquisition, and this proved to be a fatal mistake. Well, fatal, maybe. This is the most important mistake, which cost us a lot of money. The outcome from this strategy was we were unable to change the business direction of the acquired company very quickly, and the management we sent were very much engaged in firefighting every day, rather than deploy our management strategy or our acquisition strategy. And it slowed down our ability to accumulate the know-how from the business, and therefore we lost a lot of money during the initial phase of our acquisition. By 1997, the Asian crisis forced us to rethink of what we do, and then we take a very decisive decision, assign a lot of people, very aggressively deploy what we originally start to do, and we start taking production out of the UK into Europe and extending some low-end production into China. And then we also rationalized the operation of the two brands, kept focus on consumer, selection focus on professional. And then we also set up development center technology, trying to leverage on technology from the UK with engineering and capacity in production we have in China. We put a lot of money into training engineers, sending engineers from China to the UK continuously for now probably more than 20 years, 20 years. And then we also send engineers from the UK to China to make sure the transfer of know-how is done properly. We start setting up component sourcing centers and logistics centers. The impact of this is that suddenly we found our product becoming more competitive. And because we become more competitive, it also helps us learn how we can do that better. And we start to influence how we continue to operate the company, as is described in theory. And then we start acquiring talent in the local market, Japan, the dark market, and France, Belgium, and China. We market by market, we hired experienced managers to run the business. And that overcome our lack of understanding of local markets. And with Celestion, we also decided to expand into the larger market of professional public address systems. So we also hired a person who's dedicated, who has a long experience of working in the aerospace industry, selling business to business to run the business. And from that point on, the business started doing well. And we have been growing our business ever since. Well, the primary difficulty, looking back, was the fact that as a small company globalizing, we don't have the know-how. We don't have the management capacity. And this caused us a lot of problem. And what we experienced was consistent with the finding of the theory described in the eclectic paradigm and in the upscaler internationalization model. Our transformation, what have we done? We go from UK manufacturing only to manufacturing in UK, Europe, and China. We leverage on core technology developed in the UK. Today, we still have 2 development groups in the UK doing technology only, and a lot of engineering done in China. We adopted Japanese manufacturing practices. We internalize core components, the manufacturing of core components, so we become more efficient and compete with other international companies. And we manage our own sourcing and logistics. And what is also important is we believe we deploy these competitive advantages before we expand in the marketplace. And that was really earmarked by the fact that we were able to hire some good managers experienced in the local market. So that, I think, is very important, which allow us to develop into the way we are today. So I modified the original idea, the model, by adding a knowledge block. And the knowledge can either, as described in the eclectic paradigm, gradually accumulated, or it can be acquired. So from this, what can we learn? I think our experience helped describe how small companies can expand globally. We need to be really prepared for the challenge. Expanding into a new business is always very tough. And we need a lot of resources, both in terms of management, time, and investment. And there's always a balance of how much you integrate and how much you outsource. And of course, we are fortunate we acquired UK companies because we speak the language. Otherwise, it would be very difficult. Now, having looked at all that, how do we look at the situation of making things in China today versus 20 years ago? Well, of course, the cost in China went up quite a bit, but there are also significant challenges, such as the low birth rate. There are much less manpower available for hiring as factory workers. And the factories are basically very assembly-based rather than know-how based. And there could be trade disputes later on as China continues to operate the way it is. But I can also see opportunities, like the Chinese labor force is now very experienced in making good quality products, extensive experience in making small batch products, and the coordination of making small batch production is a know-how on its own. And they continue to have economy of scale, very efficient industrial structure of logistics and energy. Energy in terms of availability. And what is also very important is China is graduating roughly 8 million university graduates every year, and roughly half of that is in science and engineering. And in master's and doctoral program is roughly 10% of that. I think that is going to make a very important impact on how manufacturing in China would behave. I think Chinese manufacturing will gradually move from low-cost consumer products to high-value-added products. Will migrate from large production batch to small but high-quality production, from labor-dependent to machine-dependent. In electronics, I think China will gain a lot more competitive advantage in products which integrate hardware and software, because Chinese engineering graduates are very, very well trained in both hardware and software. And it will migrate from a simple contract manufacturer to gradually expand into global business entity. This would very much be the aim. And I think the influence of large amount of young Chinese engineer, well-educated, is going to create a very important influence on how Chinese manufacturing will be like. With few exceptions, resource allocation to developing international business would be a priority, but it's, as our experience, going to take them a lot of time. I think there will be also trade disputes from time to time, arguments, but I don't think they will turn into major stumbling blocks. I highlight 3 companies whom I think describe future of Chinese manufacturing very well. They will be, some of them are brand-based, most of them are technology-based, a lot of them are engineering capacity-based. The third company is actually very interesting. It's a Taiwanese company operating in Taiwan and China. They have a huge amount of development capacity to work with different companies. So this is my presentation. I don't know if we have time for questions and answers, but we can answer whatever question you may have later on.